Okay, so we're live on Facebook and we are recording. Today we'll be talking about financial freedom, and I just like my guests to introduce themselves. Charlene, who's my co-host, but she's also on the panel today. So,
Hi, I'm Charlene Tucker from What's Troubling You with Chantel and Charlene. I have the opportunity today to be a part of this discussion on financial freedom. I have been blessed to be a part of and in the culture of Dave Ramsey. I have been following him for a few years, and I wanted to share today some of my experience that I have been through in becoming debt free. So I'm happy to share in on this discussion today.
anybody can go next. Jeanette.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jeanette Bloom. I'm Regional Vice President for our company. I am so happy and thrilled that I was asked to do this segment on investing. So, we're going to learn some good things about investing and what the Bible says and what God tells us about investing so we can learn and do better in our own financial services.
Hi, everyone. My name is Letitia. So honored to be here with such amazing women. I am the CEO of a nonprofit that I teach youth financial literacy. And one of the things we talk about a lot is budgeting. And like Charlene said, I'm also a Financial Peace University instructor through Dave Ramsey. And so we teach financial literacy to youth and their parents. Just budgeting is a huge thing. So whether you want to invest, whether you want life insurance or whatever, you have to have a budget. So our thing is budgeting and financial literacy to youth.
All right, so our topic today is financial freedom. So my first question is, what is financial freedom? Anybody want to go first? What is financial freedom to you? What does it
I
look
think
like?
I think you start off with a loaded question, Chantel, because one of the things when just from a Christian standpoint, and one of the things that I talk to the youth about is freedom. God really, he says that the borrower is slave to the lender. And so if the borrower is slave to the lender, I need to be free from all the things that can hold me in bondage. And so whenever I'm talking to the kids, I'm talking to them about a budget. And so when we talking about financial freedom, we think that a budget limit us. I know I grew up in poverty and welfare, and I was like, forget this budget. I don't want a budget. I want to be free to spend whatever I want to spend. But whenever I grew up and I became, grown up and had bills, I had to say, you know what? Freedom is having a budget and telling where my money, where to go. And so financial freedom to me is having a budget so I can invest, so I can do those things, so I can take a vacation. And so for me, financial freedom is having a budget to do all the other things that I want to do to allow me to be free.
Just to add to what Letitia said, I agree 100%. But freedom to me means to be able to have money and to be able to have a lifestyle that I am not bound by paying somebody monthly out of my paycheck or out of the money that I'm earning. Whether it's from a business or whether it's from side hustles or whatever, I'm free to do whatever I want, and I can create this lifestyle to live in a way that I'm not bound. And I agree 100% that, when we are in debt, we are slaves. We have become slave to the lender. And being debt free allows you to not have to be bound by that. And I'm not speaking, and also I want to add that it's not just being able to have a lifestyle, but it's also a way of thinking. Because if I am under the grips and I don't have finances to help people, like we just had this big snowstorm here in Texas. If I wasn't free, if somebody needed something, Christian, we're supposed to be able to help, be good stewards, not only for ourselves and Jesus, but to other people. And we can't do that when we're bound under debt. So
That's
financial
good.
freedom is a lifestyle, it's a mindset. It's also, I'm a therapist by trade. So emotionally, you are held down and captive when you are financially in debt. So being
Yeah.
free allows you to be emotionally free as well. So it's
Good.
just it encamps all of our areas of our life. So that's what financial freedom is for me.
Oh, I have to
Very
ditto
good.
everything these beautiful women have said. But to me, also, just to add on top of that, to me, financial freedom is actually peace of mind and empowerment, almost encompassing everything what everybody else has said. Because we want to live the life that we deserve and we work so hard for.
Yeah.
And as ambassadors of Christ and children of the Most High God, guess what? I have a couple of things that the Holy Spirit, when y'all asked me to do this talk, I had to go before the throne, right? And I asked the Holy Spirit to just share some, to just deposit some key nuggets in my spirit and stuff to share with you guys today. And I just want to add a few little things here as we move forward. It's just gonna just support what you ladies have just said. You know, there's a lot of things in the Bible and stuff we read and we read and we read and reread over. And there's so much revelation in some of those things. And I just want to share a few of those. Exactly the one that you said, the Proverbs 22:7 is the one y'all talk more about, is about the borrower being a slave to the lender, right? But let's talk about a few others. Let's talk about Proverbs 29:18, where the Bible says, where there is no vision, the people perish. Well, let
All
me
right.
see how that ties in. Because what is a vision? To me, a vision is being able to see opportunities and possibilities and not be obscured with our current situations.
Right.
You have to have a vision, because without it, the Bible tells us we clearly perish. Is that not right?
That's right.
So we got to start off with vision. Let's see ourselves better than where we are. Let's see what the Lord has for us. Let me show you this one. What about John 10:10? Listen, the Bible says the thief cometh but to kill, steal, kill, and destroy. But I come, Jesus says, that you may have life and have it more. What? Abundantly. We say that all the time, all the time. But what does it mean to have an abundant life? An abundant life is not a life of struggle. Abundant life is not a life in a debt cycle. We're going to talk about that debt cycle and being a borrower, you understand? Or being a slave to the lender. That's not the abundant life that God has called us to do. So we got to take into consideration that too. But he's called us to have, he's come to have, give us an abundant life. Let me tell you about this one. Just a few others. What about Romans 12:2? Who said, do not be conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by renewing of your mind. Let's talk about that. We get information all the time, ladies and gents. We get information all the time. School is nothing but a whole bunch of information. Information is not knowledge, right? Information, you have to understand that information before it translates to being knowledge. And then guess what? Knowledge don't bring transformation. It's when you act on that knowledge. You got to act on the knowledge that you understand the information to be able to bring transformation. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I'm going to do one more, and this is going to lead me into my investment piece, but I'm going to wait until we get to that point. 19:11 and 27. That's the parable of the minas. Now, I know we've heard this. Okay, let me ask y'all this, audience. How many have you said, well done, faithful servant? We've heard that all over the place, right? And we always said, you know, when we get to heaven or when we get there, we want the Lord to say, well done, my good and faithful servant. Don't you mean, does that make sense? Do y'all know what, y'all following me here? But guess what? The one and only place that Jesus mentioned, well done, my good and faithful servant, is in Luke 19:11 and 27 with the parable of the minas. You know what that parable talks about? Investing. That's my part. It talks about investing. It talks about growing money. It talks about putting money to work. If y'all remember that Bible parable, it talked about the ruler who went off to become king, and he gave 10 people a minute and told them to put that money to work. And when he came back, what happens? He went to each and every one of them. And those that grew their money, he said, well done, my good and faithful servant. That's financial freedom.
That's good.
One that gave him back the money,
That's right.
held the money, and we'll talk about that. What did he say? He called them wicked. Now I'm gonna leave it right there. We're gonna touch base with that a little bit later on. I just want to show you what the Bible says and how we need to listen. Take that word and let that word transform our thinking, just like Charlene said and Miss Letitia said. You know what I'm saying? We just need to do that and keep that as our foundation, that foundational truth. And then we can grow and then we can understand what this is all about and do better in our own lives as well as to help others. That's my point on it.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was good. All right. So what does financial freedom look like? If I was in debt, heavily in debt, I mean, how would I get out? What's the first thing I need to do to get out?
I think when you're talking about financial freedom and what does it look like, it adds to the scripture, without a vision, the people perish. And it's funny that she said that. I just finished reading a book this morning called The Vision Driven Leader. And if we don't have vision, we do perish. If we don't have vision for our money, we perish. And so one of the ways that getting out of debt looks like for financial freedom is writing a vision. And part of writing a vision is budgeting. And so I started a budget. I have a budget journal. Every year I have a journal and a calendar, but this year God laid it on my heart to have a budget journal. And in that budget journal, it's called a zero-based budget. I need to tell every dollar where to go. So if I have $5 that I make a week, every dollar has a place for it. I have $1 for tithe, $1 for offering, $1 for ice cream, $1 for my hair, and $1 for the beauty shop. All 5 of my dollars has a place to go. So the way I begin to get financial freedom is a vision for my money. If she talks about, if we are going to live an abundant life, we cannot be passive when it comes to money. We know the Bible says the love of money is the root of all evil. But when we're talking about reaping and sowing, if we are talking about reaping and sowing, we need to have a budget in order to say, this is the vision. I'm writing the vision when I'm doing a budget. When I go to the grocery store, and again, I'm doing better with this budget. I'm not always the best because I'm a spender, and I don't like spending it on things. I like spending it on experiences. But one of the things I've learned by what budgeting is saying, I'm being the owner. I'm being the head and not the tail. I'm not letting money rule me. So when you ask, what does it look like having financial freedom? For me, it begins with, and I have a budget. And so when I do go to my sister and say, I want to invest, I have money to invest. I know where my money is going. And so in order to get out of debt and have financial freedom, I have to have a vision for it. And so we say that God made us the head and not the tail, lenders and not borrowers. Do I have a vision for my money as a lender? So I would start with a budget, and that's what I teach my kids. That's what I teach my daughter. That's what I teach her friends. Listen, if you want to go to college, you're going to college debt free because God says you are the head and not the tail, and you will not be a slave to the borrower. And so it starts with a vision and a budget.
So it's important to have a budget so you'll know where your money is going and you won't let it get away from you.
Man, listen, Chantel, I'm going to be really honest with you guys. 10 years ago, when I graduated nursing school, I was making so much money, I didn't know what to do with it. For 2 years, all my money was going out the window. I didn't know where my money went. I was like, what the heck? I'm still living paycheck to paycheck, but I'm making $60,000 a year. Where is my money going? I'm still living like I'm impoverished. But if God is telling me I'm the head and not the tail, something's not right. I need to get my mind right about this money. Because my mindset about money was saying, oh, you making it now, you don't have to be enslaved to a budget. And that is a lie from the pits of hell. God tells me that things are done in decent and in order, and that sowing and I'm reaping, I need to have a budget for the blessing that he has given me. And like she talked about the parable of the talents, if he said, if you are faithful over a few, I'm going to make you rule over
many. Yes.
And so that's what the budget has done for me, to say, you know what? You making money, but you better be a good steward over this money as well. And for me, yes, you're right, Chantel, it started with a budget, because I could not live paycheck to paycheck making $60,000 a year 10 years ago. I was a foolish version at that point.
That is wow. That is so good what she just said, because I was reflecting on the fact that I have been a tither for years and years. I mean, I've been a tither. And the funny part is I was still broke. I was a broke tither, you know. And so I was like the man who he gave the one talent, you know, because I was doing what I thought was right, but I still wasn't managing and I wasn't utilizing the money in the right way. So we made money. I was doing the right thing in terms of tithing and paying my bills, but I couldn't seem to get out of the cycle of debt. That was
Yeah.
my problem.
Good.
We had the money, I paid the tithes, I was managing the money, but I never could get out of that whirlwind.
Mhm.
And I remember when I came to Texas, I went to a Dave Ramsey seminar, and I heard him. I was interested, but the words, even though it tinkled my ear and flooded my heart, it fell to the ground.
That's good.
And I did nothing with it. And about 3 years ago, my daughter and I happened to be talking again about, she brought up Dave Ramsey, and I was like, I've been to his seminar, and I think I bought a book because I'm good at buying literature to read, but this book I never read. I just never read it. And just the information fell to the ground. So I picked it up again, and I started going to the webcast because I didn't find the book right away. And that's when I started listening and I started understanding. And so all the things I knew from the past started to line up with where I was today. And so just being able to start, I had to have a mindset. And that's what Letitia said. I had to have a mindset to want to make changes. I wanted to be better than just being on the average. Just being able to pay my bills. And because today I don't have those bills. See, that was the problem. I had bills all along. I had credit cards. I had all these other things. Today I don't have those things. And so being part of being free, I had to understand how I wanted to live, one, and two, how can I be a better steward? And that's what I wanted to be. And so for me to be the full steward I'm supposed to be living the life that God wants me to live, I had to have a different mindset on how I looked at money, you know, and learn how not to just live at a mediocre place. And I think sometimes, and I like what our other panelists said about the scriptures, you know, our renewing of our minds, because I thought it was okay. And that's the way I grew up. I thought it was okay to have credit card debt. I thought it was okay to, you know, as long as you paid it, it was okay to have it. You know, I thought it was okay. And it's not okay. It's not okay. And so I've learned that to be able to do something different, I had to have a new, renewed mind. And that's where I am today.
So can you tell us how you, well, go ahead, Ms. Jeanette, and I'll get back to Charlene.
Yeah. Go ahead, Ms. Jeanette, because I'm interested in hearing what you got to say.
Yeah, go ahead.
Right now. Okay, so here's what I always say, and I say this all the time. You cannot do what you don't know.
Yeah, yeah.
When you know better, you do better.
You do better.
Or what you don't understand.
Oh, you ladies are. I may be the oldest one on this panel, no problem. But see, I'm a victim of not a victim. I'm not a victim. I'm a victor. But anyway, I'm a product of my past, of my upbringing. You understand? And like Charlene says, we were told, hey, this is what we do. We have to go get these grades. We have to go to school. We have to get a good job. And then we make some money. And that's all we were told. Now, I've got masters and I got all that as well. But the things that I've learned about how money works, when Chantel asked the question about how do you start with financial freedom, first of all, you have to break the cycle of not knowing and understanding how money works. Yeah. And all the education that I've had, I never had that. We never had that. And guess what? I have a master's in business.
Mm.
Do a master's in business and not really learn how money truly works. But here's how. Because even in all the courses that I took, I always thought, that's not for me. That's for the rich. That's for the this. That's for the that. I don't have this kind of money. I mean, when I was growing up and stuff, my parents got my stuff from the thrift stores and so forth. You understand? So we were happy to go to school because, see, we've been living in that century for a long time, for centuries. But we have to come out of that because we live in a progressive, we serve a progressive God. And so we got to do progressive things. You understand? I'm not saying there's anything wrong with education, but at the same time, we got to know how to do better in everything, including finance. And let me tell you about finance. Charlene said something about the love of money, or maybe that was Lakeisha that said something about the love of money. That's another trick that people say, because people hold on to that. Because it's like, but do you know everything revolves around money? Everything. You can't even decide to do nothing and say, you know what, I'm gonna live like a hermit. I'm gonna go blah blah blah. I'm gonna build my own, make my own fruit and vegetables and so on. All that costs money. Everything costs money. Everything. So if we're striving for just the money, because God called us to be a blessing to others, just like Charlene talked about, that's the root of all evil. But we got to have money to be able to help people, to be able to not only tithe, but meet a budget. How many of us have meet a budget? To not cringe when we ask for $100.
Say it.
I think that's a problem when we work all day long. We work 20+ hours a week. We have masters and BSs and nursing degrees, and I have a specialty in transfusion medicine. Let's not go there. And guess what? When they ask us for $100, we cringing, and we're like, oh, they ain't talking to me. We even trying to rebuke to the devil. We say, oh Lord, I mean, the Holy Spirit, talk to me now. Talk to me now. Am I supposed to do that? And we shouldn't be that way. Not as children of God. We shouldn't be that way. But how else can we get to that freedom breaking, like she said? Let's break that cycle of not knowing. Let's start knowing. Let's learn what we should do and do what we should do.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
And that's what I say about that.
And you know what, just
That
to add
was
to
good.
Chantel, that's why I start younger, start younger with the younger generation, start young as early as 7 years old. My daughter's 15, open up a IRA for her. She has an IRA. She's doing those things. And it's funny. One of the things she's in the 10th grade, and she was talking about how she's taking a financial literacy course. And she said, Mom, the teacher asked how many of us need credit cards while we're in high school. And all the students raised my hand. And I told them no. She said, so now I have to write a paper telling my teacher why I don't agree with having credit cards in high school. I said, you better write that paper, and your mom's going to be right there with you, because the Bible tells us we are not the borrower is slave to the lender, and we will not go down that path early. So just like the enemy tried to get all our kids in all areas early, he tried to get them in money, financial debt early as well. So yes, we start early.
Yeah.
Can I just add something to that? Ms. Charlene said when she was talking about with her upcoming or whatever the case may be. A lot of times and stuff, like me, if you born and you were raised not really having, not really understanding, not really knowing, and then once you get to that school and you get that degree, and then you get that first job and that money's looking good, the first thing you want to do is, I want to start buying some things. I want to start looking, and you know what I'm saying? So you're feeling good about yourself. And it's a good thing. It's not a bad thing, you see. But what we weren't taught those. See, we start buying liabilities. We start doing, that's the credit cards and things like that. All these things make us feel good about where we are and to look wealthier than we really are.
Yeah.
And then we get caught up, you understand? And then it's like, wait a minute. I've been at this thing 10, 15 years, whatever, and I still don't have anything to show for it. And I'm still cringing for $100. Come on now. Come on now. And that goes with what Lakeisha was saying about that's how you teach them young. And I'm glad you brought that up, Mama, because we're going to talk really good about that when it comes to investing, because there's another myth out there that people have about investing. And the best thing in the world to do is to start young. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit. I want to just pick up on that.
No, that's good. That's
good.
That was
good.
One of the starting young, and it shows. And you talk about how other cultures and other generations get ahead, and you talk about generational blessings and generational curses. Again, if I grew up on poverty and welfare, my mom is getting $600 a month. But God has blessed me to make $60,000 a year at 25 years old. I got to do something different now. I got to do something different because God has given me the means to build wealth. So I have to do something different. And so it's just one of those things, like she said, starting them young, and then just the mindset, again, the mindset. Like, for instance, again, I'm a nurse. When COVID was happening, they was paying nurses $150 an hour. And I'm like, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. Then God was like, oh yeah, you doing that. This is a blessing. You better go get that blessing and go figure out what you need to do, because again, I'm giving you the power to build wealth. Why not? I had to change my mindset about it. Okay, if God is giving me the power to build wealth, and they are willing to pay me $100 an hour just to do what I'm already doing, why not do it?
Right. Charlene, I wanted to go back to you, and then whoever else after. Tell me about your progress doing Dave Ramsey.
Okay. Yeah. When I first started, Dave Ramsey does, and Letitia's going to go further into this. But when I started, it was, he has the 7 baby steps, and it was getting the $1,000. And once again, I had the $1,000. That wasn't the problem. The problem was baby step 2. That was the problem. Baby step 1 was not my problem. Attaining money is not my issue. We can make the money. Okay. It was, how do I manage the money once I get it? And what do I do with it? That was my biggest drawback. And so I struggled trying to pay down debt. I didn't realize how much debt I had, because it was neatly being paid, my $15, $20, paying the minimum amount every month. So I thought I was doing the right thing. I didn't know. And yet still, I like what Jeanette said, I was still buying liability. In the midst of all of that, I was still doing things just wrong, just continually putting myself in more bondage. And so when I went through baby step 2, which took me a while, and I paid down the largest to the smallest, and when I became debt-free, I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to react. And it's such a mindset, because it's weird when you get done and paying all your bills, you even have more money. And you still, if you didn't know how to manage it before with debt, imagine it without debt. And that was a whole thing I had to go through to learn how not to spend on my wants. And understand that everything that I saw that I wanted, because again, I hadn't been released yet. At first, I was buying things that just didn't make sense, just because I could, and I had money to do it, and I could. And so that was the wrong road. And so I began to pray and ask the Lord for guidance, and he allowed me to, I made another purchase. I did do that. I made another purchase after I paid my debt off, and I paid that debt off in a year. And so now my prayer has been to help me, and I am in baby step 3 now, because I still own a home, and that's my only debt, is my home and my monthly bills to the home. I've learned now to manage everything I have, and everything, like Letitia said earlier, has a place. Every dollar has a place. Even the saving dollars have a place. Okay. I have a 457, and I'm not sure if Jeanette's gonna talk about those retirement vehicles. I hope so, because I'm in the retirement, going towards the retirement age. So investing in my retirement, I started doing that. I have a 457, and I also have a retirement from work. But being able to understand that, and how to save and prepare myself for my next life. What happens on the next, after I finish working, what does that look like? And looking at my future differently. And so now I write things down. I'm able to prepare myself. Not only do I have an emergency fund, but I also have a savings that I don't use. I also have a place for, because he talks about a sinking fund. And so I have a sinking fund as well. So things I want to buy and I want to purchase, I don't just go out and purchase things lavishly anymore. I prepare for things. I look at what's their place. What do I need that for? How do I need that? How do I use that? What's its length? Is it worth me purchasing that now? Just not spending money just to be spending money. And so I had to learn not to do that, because it was a transition. And I'm so glad that you guys talked about how the generational, because that generational mindset, it just carries over. And here's the thing, okay? It's a rationale, because we can rationalize why we do what we do, because we don't know no better, you know? And so I'm so glad that you guys are talking about that today, because I think this will help our viewers today to hear that, you know what, it's not about being rich. It's not about having a title or accolade. It's learning how to manage, you know, and not having to be held down. Here's another thing. My air unit had an issue recently, and it wasn't broken, but it had an issue. We made a decision to just go purchase a new one to replace it. Now, years ago, I would have been scrambling around trying to figure out, how do I pay this? What do I need to do? I would have been stressed out. I'd have been upset, emotional. Again, there's the emotional getting me all tied up into this. And I didn't have to do that. I purchased it, and it did not interrupt my lifestyle. Okay, it did not put me in more debt than, I'm not in debt now. I didn't go into any debt for it. So being that said, to be able to have a lifestyle, and things that happen in your life shouldn't interrupt your lifestyle just because something happened. You know, you could get sick. What happens? Something breaks down in your home. The car breaks down. Are you able to manage that? And that's what I had to ask myself. I want to get to the place that when things break down, things happen, my life is not turned upside down because of that. I want to live like that. I want to be free from that, you know? And now I thank God I am. And there's so many questions down here. Do you see these questions, Chantel? I see.
I haven't been going back and forth.
I see some questions. Okay, but you go ahead. I'm sorry.
Okay, Letitia, can you tell us how you heard about Dave Ramsey?
You know, it's funny. I heard about Dave Ramsey years ago, like Sherilyn said, but I just wasn't ready. I just didn't have the mindset. I just wasn't ready. But this time, whenever, again, COVID hit and the pandemic hit and everything happened, I was like, God, I just thank you that I have some money that I just have in my stash and under my mattress, like my grandmother used to say, or in the bra, like my grandmother used to say. I just had some money stashed. And so when I had a book that was on my shelf that I didn't read yet, and I started reading it, and that was just it. I just took his steps. And the first step for Dave Ramsey is save $1,000 in emergency fund. And within that $1,000 is just an emergency fund. Like, again, COVID hits, the snow hits. This is just my emergency fund. Chantel and I talked about this a few weeks ago. I have a flat tire. My garage door won't open, and I need to do those little expenses that could just play with our mind and throw us off track and get us off track. But if you have that $1,000 emergency fund, it's like, whew, I can breathe. I don't have to stress about it. And so I was talking to my husband about it, and he was like, yeah, because emergencies are going to happen. They are bound to happen. You might as well have that $1,000 emergency fund. And then step 2 is say, you know what, I'm going to pay off my debt, smallest to largest. And that doesn't include the house. So Sherilyn, you are probably on baby step 6, because you paid off everything. But paying off the house is later. Baby step number 2 says, you know what, I pay off all my debt except the house. So my husband and I are working on paying off our car note right now. So that will be done. And then baby step 3 is saying I'm going to save 3 to 6 months of expenses. And then as you continue to progress, and then you get to saying I'm going to I'm gonna invest and I'm gonna save and then I'm gonna pay off my house. And that's when our sister Jeanette comes in, because here's the thing: if we are talking about a kingdom mindset, look at the kingdom mindset that God has arranged here. I'm talking about budgeting with youth, and just a shameless plug for Destiny's Leaders that we work so tirelessly in the community to help them spiritually, mentally, and financially. And then you're talking about Sherilyn, who says, you know what, I went through these baby steps. I've done these things. I'm debt free. Then you're talking about Jeanette, who says, you know what, when you budget and after you become debt free, now you come to me and let's get some investment. This is how you build wealth. Let's invest in these things, because without the mindset, I would have never done it. And I just think that God knew it was time for such a time as this.
Very good, very good. So that leads us into Miss Jeanette. Can you tell us about investing and how I invest my money, and what's the least amount of money I can invest and get a good return?
Absolutely. So investing is not a one fit all. Investing is very individualized because everybody's at a different phase of life. They're got a different risk tolerance. They got different short-term goals, long-term goals. They got everybody's different. So it's very specific. But here's what we need to keep in mind, as Letitia and Sherilyn said. Okay, so we talked about Ramsey. Now, I've listened to Dave Ramsey. I used to listen to him years and years and years ago. And he's absolutely right with all the different steps. The only thing that I do differently in my thought process, and this is me, is that I started doing this later in life, which is why we talked about early. And when you talk about the 7 baby steps that Dave Ramsey teaches, that is phenomenal information. First of all, let's start with the budget, because a lot of times people say, I don't have money. I don't have money. But you got money coming in and you're a working individual, but I don't have money. That's where budgeting is so key, because budgeting allows you to see where all your money is, what money's coming in, where is it going, and where you can cut and save and get the money to do the things that you need to do to prepare, right? I like the baby step 1. That was the first thing I did too. Years ago, when I heard Dave Ramsey, was the baby step 1 would get the $1,000 and get the $1,000. But then look, nobody knew nothing about COVID. $1,000 wasn't going to help do, and that's why we got 30 million plus people that went to unemployment with COVID happened. Nobody would have ever imagined a world pandemic. You know what I'm saying? And so even with that, after you get to that $1,000, the only thing that I veered off when I came to Dave Ramsey, and I got to say it, ladies, gentlemen, I got to be honest, is because since I was up in age, I wanted to still live. I wanted to still enjoy some things. I wanted to still have, because Dave Ramsey is a beans and rice and beans guy. You know what I'm saying? He's like, cut down, do that, eat beans and rice and beans until you get all that debt paid, get that emergency fund, get all that debt paid, get your house, get your cars, get all that debt paid. Once you get paid, you don't need debt stacking, because we teach debt stacking, same principle, right? And once you get the debt paid, then you're going to start doing that emergency fund. But see, I kind of started doing a little bit of all of that at the same time. You know what I'm saying? And that's just how I did it. I did, after I got the emergency fund done, I did short term, a little bit going to short term and a little bit going to long term. Because here's why that is so important to me. Or not to me, just in financial freedom. Because the longer money is in the market, the longer the money is there, the earlier you start, the more you make, the more you have. I couldn't be 50 years old and paying off my house. And then I said, okay, now I can start investing. I will have no money to live off and to retire on. I can't do that. You know what I'm saying? And tomorrow's, like, tomorrow's not promised to none of us. Praise God that we can claim long life according to the word of God. You understand what I'm saying? But it's still not promised, right? And so once you get that, you can shift your monies into putting some monies in your short-term savings account, like that sinking fund. If you got some big top ticket item that you want to do something with and you want to put money in that fund, but you also have to invest for later years, for retirement. Letitia has children. She can go off and start doing some things and put some money into a 529 plan for her kids if the college is in their midst, is in their sights and so forth and so on. But there are little things that you can do. Once you get that budget done, you can see and maneuver, and you can have a financial professional help you put your money into vehicles where you're satisfying all that at the same time. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. I just want to throw out one question. So yes, I have IRAs, Roth IRA, my company matches 401k, all those things. And I've been doing it for years. My question is, how do we, you talked about how the longer it's in there, the more it grows. How do we factor in compound interest? And how do we explain compound interest when it comes down to making money and investment? Because like you said, a lot of people like, I don't have money, I'm broke, I'm living paycheck to paycheck. What about those people who's like, listen, I cannot afford anything? And how do we talk to them, and how do we talk to people who help them understand the law of compound interest? Because here's the thing, compound interest works against us. How do we get it to work for us?
Exactly, Letitia. You said a mighty word right there, girl. You spoke volumes.
That's it.
Because that compound interest is huge. It can be our worst enemy. We got debt, but it can be our best friend when we're investing. And all it is that the money. Okay, we spend $1,000. Okay, let's talk about the worst enemy. We spend that $1,000 and interest is being charged on that $1,000. And when we pay the minimums, like Cheryl Lynn was talking about, what have you, what we do, that goes up, that interest adds on to a principal amount, and we still paying those minimum amounts. Well, that's why it takes us 29 years to pay a minimum amount on $2,000. That's unheard of. Who wants to take 29 years to spend to pay back $2,000? But we paying the minimum and we think we're doing something. We can afford the minimum. Why do you think that when you go into a car dealership and the first thing they want to know, what do you want to pay? And you tell them, well, I think I want to pay what's comfortable for you. And you tell them, well, I want to pay $300 a month. Well, they're going to figure out how to get you to pay $300 a month. But guess what? They're not telling you all that interest you're paying. And when you add that up on the back end, you can double and triple for that darn car. Yeah. Understand? And so that's one of those things. And so, but that's the enemy. But when it comes to investing, Letitia, if you got Roth IRAs and IRAs and so forth, those are fantastic vehicles. And those are the vehicles that we teach as well. And you see that Roth IRA? Baby, let me tell you something. That thing is the bomb. You want to tell me why it's the bomb? Let me tell you why it's the bomb. Because the thing is, we don't want to pay a lot of taxes, because the more taxes we pay on anything, that's less money we have disposable. Does that make sense? The Roth IRA is a retirement product where you keep that open for 5 years and everything it earns is tax-free when you take it out. That's the best product on the market right now. And that's why I throw around that Roth IRA. But here's the thing. There are limits, annual limits to a Roth IRA. There are annual limits to a traditional IRA. There are annual limits to 401ks and 403bs, right? But for Roth, the annual limit for under 50 years old is only $6,000 a year. The annual limit for somebody 50 and over, which they consider catch-up contributions, is $7,000 a year. That's not a lot of money. So when you wait until you're 50 years old to start a Roth, and you do it for what, 10 years, if you're over 50, you're now 60, well, you put in 70,000. But you have to make sure that Roth is invested in a vehicle that's going to bring you a much bigger return. And that's what we help people do and see. You understand? The monies that, you have the 457s and you have all these other retirement monies, but you have to make sure that they are in vehicles to where the money will continue to make money. Even when you start to make withdrawals, you want it to continue to make money so you don't even lose the principal monies. So, we have clients right now that'll have maybe for, let's say $400,000, right? But they're in vehicles to where they may be taking $60,000 out a year. And yet at the end of every year, they got $420,000. It's like they didn't take anything out. And that's what you have to be careful for. And that's what you want to be careful that you do. But only a licensed professional that will be able to afford you and show you the various vehicles based on what you want to do with your money and based on what you want to do can get you in those right vehicles. Because a savings account is not it. Let me just add this right here, right now. You will never build wealth saving money at a bank or a credit union. Never. You will never be wealthy and be generational and build generational wealth with a job and not doing anything with it. You understand what I'm saying? We have children. I mean, I have 2 grown kids now, and I got grandchildren. I got 7 grandchildren. But listen, you know, we're going to talk about that. The Bible talks about leaving an inheritance to your children's children. We talked about that, right? And so that's where I am. I'm like, well, my children are good, but guess what? My grandbabies and stuff, you know, whatever, I'm going to do what thus said the Lord, right? And so we got them, like Letitia has and stuff, you know, doing things, budgeting, that kind of thing, you know, because they get their little allowances and so forth and so on. That grandmama is leaving an inheritance to her when the Lord calls me home. You understand? But while I'm here, I want to help others because I wasn't given this information when I was coming up. My background, my generational curse was go to school, get an education, and Social Security is your retirement. Well, listen, I didn't know no better. And when I finished my BS and I started making some decent money, I saw that little FICA tax coming out. And I'm like, well, wait a minute, what the world is that? The FICA tax was just as much as the federal tax, you understand? The Bible says the Caesar was the Caesar, right? That's the taxes, right? So I was okay with the federal, but I'm like, what is this FICA tax? Well, that's going to Social Security. Well, me and my smart self, see, I was told that's your retirement. So when people say you need other things, I was like, no, I don't. No, I don't. I got FICA tax coming out of my paycheck every pay period. That's Social Security. But listen, I hate to tell y'all this. I mean, I hope I'm not speaking my age here, but we talking 40 years ago. See, that amount of money that was coming with Social Security was pretty good. It wasn't too bad for a month. But 40 years now, that's nothing. But nobody told me. Nobody explained it to me. Nobody showed me vehicles that I can do and why I needed to do this like I know now. And I just want to educate. I need to show you. I need to help you. Let me help you. You understand? Let me show you where you can do this so you can not be in my position or like a million other people and doing what's right with your money. Does that make sense?
So good.
It makes sense. Yes. So Jeanette.
Yes.
What's the least amount of money I can invest and get a return?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked. I can't tell. Listen. The other myth that people have is that I got to have a whole lot of money to invest. Absolutely false. You can start a little account or whatever, even a Roth, as little as $25 a month. But start it. You remember I said the max if you're under 50 is $6,000 a month. You can't do anything more. Anything more, you get a penalty, right? But the better thing is if you want to get $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 in retirement when you get to 60 or whatever, when you decide you don't want to work anymore, you gotta start that early. Now, when we talk about other vehicles, investment vehicles, there's other things, you know, there's other thing, there's stocks, you know, mutual funds, there's bonds, there's real estate, there's gold, there's different things like that. You know what I'm saying? We don't do goals and stuff like that or whatever, but there's other ways that you can invest as well. But you want to have money that's available to you when you absolutely need it. That's something that goes on with mutual funds and investing in stocks and things like that, right? That money is still liquid. You can still liquid. You don't have to have a whole lot of money in a savings account because a savings account, you can get it tomorrow, right? But if you had a mutual fund that was gaining more interest on your money, that was working hard for you in the industry, in the economy, if you desperately had a hardship and needed it, you can get that money as well in 2 to 3 days. So it's not like it's going into this account and you can't even touch it or whatever. It's best that you don't, because the longer it's in there or whatever, the more it's going to make for you. That money's going to compound. The interest that it's making is going to add in. That's going to be more money in there. And then there's more money you're making. And that's how that compound interest keeps going and going and going. And the longer it's in there, the more you have at the end. Does that make sense?
So I have a question, okay? Because I have the retirement vehicles, but I'm like you, Jeanette. I started late, all right? And so, you know, I woke up late, and you said you might be the oldest, but I'm up there too. And so, and I know there are other people who are going to be watching this who are in the same, who are 50 and older, who don't have things in place yet, okay? And so not only trying to, and hopefully Letitia will talk more about how to become debt free so that we can do what you're talking about. But my question is, Jeanette, if you have a retirement, and this is my own personal question, if you have a retirement like a 457, and that's what I have my job pays retirement, okay? So I have that, I have a pension, okay? And then I have a 457, which is done pretty good, okay? But I found out about the Roth later. So now, I wasn't in a position to open up a Roth before. I am now, but I was wondering, could I transfer that 457, which is quite good, over to the Roth so that I can start gaining interest without having a penalty?
Now, the 457 is a deferred compensation package. It's a deferred compensation vehicle. What you have to be careful with is tax consequences. Because if you're paying into that with money before you're taxed, that's called tax deferred, meaning that you will pay tax on that money when you take it out.
Yeah.
You won't be able to move that into a Roth, because even though Roth is another IRS qualified plan, see, you still have to pay taxes on that money. Now, what you could do is transfer that into a traditional IRA if you wanted to control your investment vehicle. See, you have some things where you want to control your investment vehicle. Your financial advisor, your financial coach, I'm a financial coach, we can show you what vehicles we can put your money in and what they've averaged over the last year or so, if it's different from where you are. Now, you said they did pretty good. Now, what's pretty good? I mean, what's the average? Because sometimes people really throw out percentages and stuff like that, but then the monies don't really show that. You know what I'm saying? So there's a lot more involved in what you're asking right now. Does that make sense? You can't move your 457 plan into a Roth because it's two different tax vehicles.
Okay. So with that being said, if I wanted to do a Roth now, keeping my 457 where it is, okay, if I wanted to invest in the Roth, I would have to, and because I'm older now. So, I mean, I'm 57. So I'm supposed to retire in a few years. I'm going to retire from one job, not all work, but one job in about 6 years. So you mentioned that to have it for 7 years would be the prime time. So what would I do
The
to,
Roth? The Roth?
Yeah.
No, it's 5 years.
5 years. Okay.
A Roth
So
needs
would it not be
5 years.
Would it not be good to do that? Or
You need to do a Roth still. I mean, in this day and age, Charlene, we need several vehicles to manage.
Right,
in
right.
retirement.
And that's what he
It's
talked
not
about.
just a pension. It's not just a 557. We need our IRAs, and we need Social Security. Like me, I've always been a worker, that kind of thing, or whatever, right? And so we just need. You ever heard they used to have this three-legged bench? You know, you need 3 legs. You need several legs. You need a different modes of income coming in for you
Mhm.
to be successful in
And
retirement
I
and
agree with that.
to do and live and do and be a blessing to others. Does that make sense? And so I would strongly still advise a Roth. And I would truly maximize the Roth. Now, each individual retirement vehicle has a maximum. Like the maximum for a 401 or a 403 is like 23,000. If that's kind of money is what you're putting in your you said you had a 457. I'm not sure. See, this is it's kind of personal, kind of like I don't know how much you want to
Yeah.
say would you ever and stuff, you know, that kind of thing.
Right.
But you can max out any vehicle you need to. I would strongly still suggest to max out. You're over 50, so your maximum for a Roth would be 7,000. If you could afford that, to open up a Roth and start putting as much in it. You don't have to put a lot. We can decide to put it in a vehicle or what you want to do with it. If you want it to grow aggressively or conservatively or whatever, if you want to get the max of that money and make it grow as much as you can or whatever. And see, we do, okay, this is what we do. I know I'm going to get to this because Chantel asked me to talk about the Robinhood and things like that or whatever. And I'm going to get on that a little bit. But see what we do, Charlene, we do mutual funds. And I was going to talk a little bit about what a mutual fund is.
Go ahead.
Y'all don't mind me talking about what a mutual
Well,
fund is?
before you get into the mutual fund, I got another question before you get into that, okay?
I'll piggyback on what you're saying.
When you said about the 7,000, that's for a year, correct?
That's a year.
Okay, because I know Dave Ramsey talks about the 15% in terms of the investment. And so what I did, and that's where I got aggressive. Once I started understanding and looking at my whole life, that's what I'm saying. When you get renewed of your mind, it allows you to become aggressive. And he calls it gazelle intensity, but I became extremely aggressive. And so I know it was the 15, but I think I'm doing like 19%.
Your annual salary.
Excuse me?
You're doing 19% of your annual salary?
Yes.
Into your 457?
Yes.
Okay, but
yeah, so for me to catch up, I wanted to be able to catch up. And so I had to aggressively do that. And so I did go to a financial person. He has these financial people, and I went. And so I was able to talk. So a lot what you were saying. And again, when you don't know, you don't know. Okay. And that's why I said you're here today to talk about that. You know, I want somebody else to, because I can't verbalize the lingo, because she said a lot of things you're saying, she said to me and my husband. And so one of the things that she brought up about us being able to do the IRA and still being able to split. And that's what he talks about. We didn't have to put everything into, it's just doing 15% across the board. But because I'm the age I am now, I want to be able to do it to the extreme so that I can get it on the next end. So, and I know there are so many people like myself who are in the same predicament, you know, who did not save in the beginning, who did not put away stuff in the beginning. You know, I've worked all my life. So yeah, I have Social Security too, but it'll come and that'll be good. But I want to maintain the lifestyle I have now. I don't want to be poor. I don't want to be house poor. I don't want to be poor. I've been poor before. I don't want to be poor again. Okay. And so I'm just saying there are people like myself who are in the same predicament and don't do what they need to do. And that's why I said I wanted you to just kind of slow it down just a tad bit, because I know it's a lot of information, but I think that people need to hear it, you know, and it's just so much to grasp at one time.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't want people, because this segment, and maybe we need to do it again next month, Chantel. We were talking about what we should do. Maybe we should bring it back again next month so that we can kind of get it all in and just kind of focus on Chantel and Jeanette so they can really, because this is so crucial to the lives of people.
Because I was going to
And I-
ask you that to
and I
sit down and do an investment 101 for dummies. For some people that didn't understand, because you were going kind of
right,
fast.
but you gotta get debt free before you can invest.
Absolutely.
Right.
Now see
Well,
that's where I think you can, I mean, you need to be debt free, absolutely, because it's going to free up so much money. But it depends on where you are in life, because you don't want to stay there and yet not invest. You still need to start investing earlier. Now, Charlene, you did something, you and your husband, you said you talked to a financial professional. That's a good step. That's a good step for them to share with you exactly what you need to be doing and what's the best recourse. But like you say, people are on this call listening and they don't know where to go. And as a financial coach, that's where I can truly help them when it comes to investings and so forth. Because I can't say all that they need to do because everybody's situation is so different.
Everywhere is different, but
Everybody's
you
in
know,
a different phase in life. But what you have to know is know you need help. Let's start there.
Yeah.
Recognizing that you need help, and that's okay. Let's help each other. Let's empower each other. You know what I'm saying? And then I mean,
but Jeanette, I'm
I
gonna
can
be
speak
honest
for
with you.
hours.
Jeanette, I'm gonna be honest with you. When I that's why I had to explain my situation. Money wasn't an issue for me to make. That wasn't my issue. Okay. And I know there are a lot of people out there who are gonna watch this who one don't have funds, and that's a whole different
Ball game.
ballpark. Okay. And they're still in debt.
yeah,
But this is just again my belief system that if you don't know how to manage your basic dollar, it's impossible for you to see how to even look at putting money in a vehicle to
That's
make it
yeah.
work for you.
So,
Okay,
so,
you can't
That's
even
correct.
see that. All
Right.
right.
but
And I just think your eyes have to be open to knowing how to handle your basic dollar before
yeah.
you can even get to the next dollar. Lakeisha, you gonna say something?
I'll add to this again. I'm walking around the hospital and I'm talking to all my coworkers and everybody who will listen. And we just had a patient who passed. He was 95 years old and his family was like, you know what? But he lived a good life. He is leaving $5 million to our family. And he said, we are good. And so I started asking my coworkers, I said, do y'all have life insurance? Do y'all know how to budget? What's going on in your financial situation? And one of my coworkers said, Letitia, she's a nursing aide. She said, Letitia, I make $15 an hour. She said, I need some life insurance, but I can't afford it. She said, I want to invest, but I can't afford it, Letitia. And I said, well, we need to sit down and talk about a budget. And I said, tell me what you're doing with your money. I'm working 40 hours a week here at the hospital. I'm busting my butt. I have $800 in car notes. I have $1,200 in rent that I need to pay. I have $5,000 in credit card and I have $50,000 in student loan. Letitia, how can I afford life insurance and how can I afford to invest? Geesh, how do we help these people? So when you're talking about debt, one of the biggest things, my goal this year that I stopped doing is stop eating out. So I said, you know what? I'm going to stop eating out, stop wasting my money so I can invest. So I started investing in myself instead of investing in Chick-fil-A. And so if we want to, yes, it starts with a mindset, but you have to have the discipline in order to do it, to get out of debt, to be able to have the mindset. So one of the things that I begin doing, I say, honey, let's look at our credit score. Look at your credit report. What's on my credit report and how much debt do I have? Because if we say, and you know what, I want to get out of debt and I want to talk to Jeanette. Yes, I love that Jeanette and Charlene are in that place. And I'm going to get there. I'm not there yet. But I'm thinking about the people and the individuals who says, you know what, I'm tired of living paycheck to paycheck. I'm tired of dying poor, dying with no insurance. I'm tired of the GoFundMe's. How do I get to that point to where I can talk to Jeanette about investment? Because I want to leave a financial legacy. And it all starts with having a mindset first and saying, you know what, I'm going to stop doing this. Now, do I still eat out every now and then? Maybe once a month versus every day. I said, no, you know what? I went on a fast 90 days, no fast food. I'm not spending no money on fast food. If anyone wanted to take me out to lunch, they had to pay because I wasn't paying. And I just drew the line there versus I'm doing it every day. And so getting out of debt It's a mindset, and you have to fight for it. You have to fight for it to say, you know what? I want to get to where Sherilyn and Jeanette is. What do I have to do and sacrifice? And when we talked about sowing and reaping, I'm going to sow good seeds so I can get good seeds. And yes, it sucks. My friends want to go, you know what, man, my sister is still in Louisiana. She makes $20,000 a year. How can I help my sister get out of debt so she can talk to Jeanette? How can I help her? So they don't.
I find it.
Oh, Chantel, you
Well,
got stuff. We got, listen.
she knows about me already, Jeanette. We had a whole Zoom on life insurance already.
It's we do it all. We help you. You know
Mhm.
what our company does? We have what's called an FNA. It's called a financial needs analysis. We do this free of charge. The individual you just spoke of, the co-worker, the sister, or whomever, call me. We can do a financial need analysis. We can look at everything you bringing in, everything that's going out. We
Here's the
can
thing.
show you. We can show you what you have, what you not, where you can cut. We can offer ideas of where you can cut, and we can offer you an opportunity to even earn some extra income. We have the
How
whole gambit.
Well,
how
I would first say you have to understand money to be able to manage money. And a lot of people don't understand money or don't have a concept of how money works. So I
it
would say that would be the first place to start,
good.
educating people on how money works, how you
And
can make your money work for you.
and here's the other thing, because we're talking about money openly right now, but a lot of people do not trust people to come to them and be vulnerable. I know Chantel can talk about the fear of vulnerability, the fear of shame. I do not want to come to you and say, listen, I'm struggling and I'm in debt. It's hard, and we have to stop this as a people because we are dying a slow death by not talking about money and fear and shame and doubt. Now listen, just because you are rebuked, just because I ask you, why do you have those $200 pair of Jordans on? That doesn't mean that I am shaming you. I'm helping you to helping you to understand that, listen, those $200 pair of Jordans will do you no good when you are 50 years old. And so it's hard to talk about money because the fear of shame and vulnerability. So yes, Ms. Jeanette, you're right. And those products are amazing, I'm sure. But it's hard for me to tell my sister to call you because she will not want to call you. She's gonna be like, nope, I don't know her. She's gonna talk about me. We are afraid of the shame and being vulnerable when it comes down to money. But what happens? We begin to perish, we begin to die, and we stay in that same rut, in that same mindset, in that same cycle of poverty. Because I ain't talking to them. I don't want them to know my business.
It's a
But
trick.
That's what I find out when I talk to
Yes.
people about life
It's
insurance and everything.
trick.
They don't want to talk about money or anything else. And I just say, don't ask me to pay anything on GoFundMe because you could have had life insurance. If you had this Michael Kors purse, this Gucci purse, you could have bought life insurance. I'm not paying for a GoFundMe. Don't ask me nothing.
You remember the scripture I said, the devil comes but to steal, kill, and destroy? That word right there speaks volumes, and that's in every area of our lives. You understand? And if you have someone that's spiritually grounded, it's not a shaming session. It's not looking down on. It's like you can't do what you don't know. Remember that I said that? And when you do know, you whatever. Listen. The Bible clearly tells us that not only we should help one another, we should be there to support one another, but we have to be able to teach one another. How can I teach you? But yet, guess what we do? Okay, don't take this the wrong way. We say we're going to school and we're going to get more education. And how many times did we go and spend all these years in school, and less than 10% of all that schooling and all $50,000 worth of school loans, we don't even use. But we feel honorable saying, well, let's just go to school and get some more money. Why not talk to a professional and so forth that's got your best interest at heart? That wants you to do better. You understand? If I can sit here and tell you all the things that I've done and how the Lord has blessed or whatever the case may be. It's not, I don't want to make money. I want to help. I want to empower. I want to help and show people what I didn't get. that I'm scrapping to get, in my retirement years, right? But I see what you can do in your younger years. Let me help you get that effort. Let me help you do a better thing. And I know, I understand the fear. What does the Bible tell you in 2 Timothy 1:7, ladies and gents?
God has not given us
He's
spirit
given
of
us a
fear,
spirit of fear, but a
power
power,
of.
love, and a sound mind. You
So
got to
I
have a sound mind that's strong enough to say, you know what? I need help.
So I have a question. And maybe Earlene can help address this, because you talked about that spiritually grounded. If you are spiritually grounded, you know those things. How do I get to being spiritually grounded? Because I have friends who say, Letitia, what you're saying is right, but how do I get there? How do I grow spiritually so I can grow financially? Again, if we talking about my sister, she may not be spiritually grounded. So how do you get there to that mindset to say, I need to be spiritually grounded? Yes, we are spiritually grounded women, but what about that person who is not spiritually grounded and haven't gotten to that mindset yet? Because sometimes it's hard. Sometimes it's hard to say, well, okay, if you were spiritually grounded, you can invest and you can do these things. But what about the people who are not there? Those are the people that I'm worried about. Yeah, how do you get there?
You have to submit. Yeah, it's a submission. You have to submit.
I think you have to submit, but I think that platforms like this allow people to see the transparency of others and realize that I'm not alone.
That's good.
Okay. Because it's one thing because I know a lot of people are going to watch this and not know, because I don't really talk about it, because I don't ever want to be in a position of sounding like I'm trying to sell something to somebody. Okay. Sell a dream to them that doesn't work for them because they don't understand or believe. Because it took me a minute to understand it. Okay. It took me a minute. Who's a Christian? Who's been tithing? Who's been doing all the right things? And I still was wrong. Okay. So that's what I'm saying, to get to that point. And there are people who are even not even there, like Letitia said, and yet and still, I think they need to hear or be a part of a platform like this that says, you don't have to be ashamed. There are people out there who can help you. There are people out there who have studied. Okay. And then when you're willing to be transparent, somebody else can realize that, you know what, I can be helped too. I'm not alone. Nobody's going to talk about me, quote unquote, or make me feel like, I'm less than. And Evelyn says, she's online. She said, it's a decision. It is a decision. Okay. But I have to not feel vulnerable in that decision.
Right.
I have to not feel shamed in that decision. Okay. Because I probably wouldn't have never prior, and I'm just being honest, prior to who I am now, I might not have ever come on this platform and talked about this, because I don't want other people to know that I was broke. Living, buying, having stuff. I sure was. I was buying. If you knew me back in the days, I have a bag fetish. I did. I don't have it anymore. I had a bag fetish, and I should have been investing in Gucci, because that's all I bought back in the days in my 20s. That's what I bought. My daughter was born, and that's the stuff I had. And it wasn't right. Okay. But you know what? No one said it was wrong either. Okay. No one said, hey, when you become 30 and you start having kids, you know what? What's those Gucci bags going to do? You could have been doing something else. Nobody told me that. What they did was they said I look cute, and they encouraged me. Okay. And then when I got older and I realized that I hadn't done the things I needed to do, those things didn't matter anymore. When I wanted another car, my car kept breaking down and I needed another car. Okay. I didn't have the money to buy it at the time. But I was looking cute trying to hold on to the Gucci bag that was wearing down. Yes, I was. Okay. And the Coach bag, when Coach bags were really leather. Yeah, I was back then, not now when they're not real leather, but back then when they're real leather. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So I'm just saying, I was very materialistic. That's how I grew up, and that's what I believed in. But once I got older, I realized those things really don't matter. They really don't matter. What matters is what's going to happen to me later on. How do I live later? And when I started watching other people, I started seeing people retire and they really didn't have any money.
And I just
You know, people who believed in Social Security, they got a rude awakening. They were living paid month to month. Their lifestyle had to change. And I don't want my lifestyle to change. Okay? He didn't create me to be in lack. No, he did not. The earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. I should not live like that. The devil is a lie. Yes, it is. Okay? And I should not live beneath my privilege, who he created me to be. And you shouldn't either.
That's
and
good.
I'm not talking about being rich and spend. I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about $500,000, $600,000, $500,000 house. I'm not talking about all that. I'm talking about just being able to live a lifestyle that you're accustomed to, even when the money is not every 2 weeks, even without a bonus. You should be able to live like that. Okay? And that's what I'm saying. You ladies are excellent in being able to help people to understand that you don't have to be ashamed, you know, and to hear women who look like me. I'm sorry, and I, again, not trying to put shame on anybody else, but women who look like me, okay, who've been through life experiences like me, okay, who can make it.
And I just wanted to say the reason Charlene and I started What's Troubling You is because we wanted people to know that they weren't alone. Because we've been through some of the things that they're going through, and we want to help them. So no one should feel ashamed. Because I can't judge anybody.
No. And we don't want to be here to judge. Albert Bloom says you have to be teachable and correctable. Oh, I love that, correctable. And have an attitude to want to learn.
That's Jeanette's boo.
Oh, okay. Well, he's writing on here. I see it. Okay. Okay.
Gracielle Sherburne said that we need to read Profit First. She said it's a good book and it'll change our life, especially as a business owner. So it's Profit First.
I think Charlene said there were other people that were posting questions. Are there any other?
No, there were no questions.
They were posts. They were posts.
There weren't questions.
They were posts. They were statements.
All right. So Miss Jeanette, are you gonna?
You
wanted a PowerPoint? Some slides? You're on mute. I can't hear you.
Know what the form, I didn't really know what the form was going to be like or what have you, because this is the first time. And again, ladies, if I haven't said it before, I'm very honored to be a part of this. But I've said pretty much a lot of things that was on my little PowerPoint, no problem.
Okay. What about the mutual funds you want to talk about?
Right. Oh, I just wanted to give people just a little information about what a mutual fund is, because there are other things coming up in the media. Chantel asked me if I knew anything about the Robinhood and the e-trading and Charles Schwab and all these other things that's coming up in the media. And trends always happen. And this is, I guess because of COVID, these things were happening before COVID, but then with COVID and everybody was stuck in the house and stuck in the computers and things like that, I think they just kind of went through the roof. But some of these, but not to speak on those things, what we deal with in our company, and Chantel is one of my business partners, and this is not to do anything to promote anything like that, is just to show how we help people in individuals and so forth. We focus in on mutual funds. And what's a mutual fund? People don't know what those are. And remember I said you can start a mutual fund with a minimum of $25 and go up from there. But what it is, it's a fund, and according to your specific situation, what do you want to do with it? How risky do you want to be with it? How long do you think it needs to be in there? How you want it to be in there? What's your long-term goals? What's your short-term goals? What's your tax situation? I mean, what do you want? Just all those things. And you tell us what you want to do and how you want to do it. And we connect you to a fund that will do that. And all the people in the fund have a mutual goal. If it's to generate some income, is to generate growth. That's the purpose of the fund. Now, the funds are professionally managed. It's not me, but they're professionally managed. These are people who are watching the market day in, day out to make sure that fund meets your ultimate goal. Now, what's a mutual fund? Many people are into it, but guess what it is? It's a share or a piece of ownership into 100 different companies. It's a diversified product that will allow you a share or a piece of ownership to hundreds of companies. The fund puts together the companies that will meet your ultimate goal. Does that make sense? And then you put your money in there and you let that ride. Now, are there sales fees that go along with that as far as the professionally managed? Yes, there are some, depending on the vehicle that you get into. But what does it matter? Those funds are small considering the upside or what you can get. Now, here's the beauty of it is, because a mutual fund involves like 100 different companies or even more, right? What's the chances of all 100 going down the tubes? Whereas in on some of these other situations and stuff where you're dealing with specific stocks or bonds or anything like that, other investments, you get into one, that thing falls, you lose all your money. So with a mutual fund, it's almost like a safety net to where they're constantly moving companies in and out of that fund to keep it going so that you're not losing principal in a way, but that you're still making money. And then once you start this, there's some fees involved up front, but it's like an annual fee. Now, I'm just going to say this, I had one, it started off at about 50,000 or 50K or whatever the case may be. I paid 2,000 in fees. I'm just going to share this 2,000 in fees up front. And people think, oh, wow. But guess what? In 1 year, I made 6. So what does it matter that you pay that fee? And then guess what? After you pay the first fee, it's $10 a year. Are you serious? What does it matter when you have a money that you've made 6 grand on that you paid this, but then so I averaged 4,000 plus in the first year? You'll never get that in a savings account or in a credit union anywhere, ever, not ever. So when you think about that, it's a vehicle that we share with people, that we introduce clients to help them meet their financial goals, short-term and long-term, to put it mildly. Now, these other things that are out there, they got investment groups, they got the Robinhood, they got the e-trading and stuff. That's for you to do your own thing. You have to do your own thing. You have to learn all there is to learn about the stock market. Now, I am registered with the Federal Reserve, with the federal government. I'm registered with the states, with several states and the federal government, right? But you have to learn that. And you don't have to get those licenses, but for you to understand what all that means and you to watch the market day in, day out, all day, every day, whatever the case may be, to be able to move your money in, move your money out, do a trade here, there, that's to people's own individual situations. I got a whole lot of life to live. You understand? I got a whole lot of life to live. I don't want to do that. I just feel that I can do the same thing and make the same amount of money. I can do something in an aggressive fund and it's doing aggressive stuff. I may, have a little drop because the economy is going or whatever the case may be, but over a long period of time, it averages 10, 15%, over a longer period of time, not every day, you understand? So that's one of those things that we kind of juggle and that we like better than to be doing it ourselves. Does that make sense? But can I just say this? Everything in this life costs money. Everything. Even with those types of investments. I was on a call. I was just curious to see what they were talking about. And I had gotten this email about, doing options and stock options and making tons of money. And okay, I said, you know what, this is interesting. Let me get onto this. And so I got onto it. And of course, I know since I'm already licensed with the federal government, I know I got my Series 6 and 63 and 26 and all of this, right? And I know what they were talking about. And I got a lot about, you know, what they've done with their money and things like that, and how they've made tons of money and things like that, and be able to fund things. And then it went on to say a little bit about what options were and stock options and things like that. I said, okay. But I'm thinking to myself, the layperson, how in the world are they understanding what the world? Because I mean, for me being licensed, I'm like, okay, I see what, but how will they understand that? But then at the very end, it's a course. You learn more through a course. And it's a course with modules. And we're talking $2,000 for the course, maybe, or even more. And how many of us, I mean, Charlene, I know Letitia's probably young, whatever. I've had enough courses. I don't want to get into courses where I get all this information, I can't even use it. You understand? I'm done with courses and things like that. You know what I'm saying? But it was still a course. I've even gotten into one of those things, you know, the thing or whatever the case may be. I don't know if it was a Robinhood kind of thing, but Robinhood is when you're doing day trading and so forth on your own, where you out there trying to do your own thing. You put some money into an account like E-Trading. You put some money into an account and you say, okay, I want this stock. And you don't really know about the stock. You don't really know about the company. You don't really know what they've done. You don't know what they're averaging in months or years, or what they did last year, or what they did last quarter. And you don't know how they're going up and how they're going down, but you're doing that, and you say, well, I'm investing. You know what I'm saying? But you can lose a lot of money like that. Who wants to invest and lose money? We want to protect that money as much as possible. Does that make sense? And so mutual fund is a safe haven to do that. There are other companies out there that will do mutual funds for you and that kind of thing. We do things a little bit different or whatever the case may be, but I'm not here to promote that, what we're doing. I mean, I'm welcome to help anybody who wants to know more or whatever the case may be. Chantel, and I know Charlene will be able to get in touch with me or whatever, but it's like, that's in a nutshell. And if you want a safe vehicle to where your money is growing and working for you, you want to get yourself into a mutual fund where you have a piece of ownership in 100 companies and you can diversify and you can do it as quickly as you want it or slow as you want it. Then you can do it to where I'm doing this short term or I can do this long term. You make the decisions. And that's how we work with you.
Okay, I have a question from Facebook from Evelyn. She asks, what suggestion do you have for charged off debt?
Okay. So what I say about charged off debt. Now, it depends on how, okay, did you get it charged off or did you seek financial help to get it charged off? Because sometimes it's going to sit on your credit record. And funny you should ask that question. Years. Let me be transparent, because if you can't be transparent, you can't be helpful, right? Years ago, me not understanding about how credit works and that kind of thing, if y'all have time for this, I got involved with a gentleman and so forth. As a matter of fact, the daddy of my firstborn. And I didn't know how it worked, but he would get all this credit and all this kind of stuff. And he'd say, oh, I get a card in your name. I said, okay, I don't want to use it, but okay. But I didn't understand how it all worked. Well, when things didn't work out with us, what happened? He filed bankruptcy. And guess what happened? The creditors came after me because I had a credit card in my name that I never used. Never, not once. And I was furious, didn't know where to go, didn't know how to go, because I was just, you know, I got out of college, I was making my money, I was buying liabilities like you, Charlene, right? And I'm like, what? I didn't use it. And I had no leg to stand on. So I had to go get counseling. And I didn't, credit counseling, right? It was called CCC, Credit Consumer Counseling, years ago. I don't know if anybody knew anything at all about that. But I was like, I can't pay all of this. I've got my own bills. How can I pay the bills that he's made because he's filed bankruptcy? And I didn't use any of this stuff. So I got charged off debt. I'm saying all that to say that, right? And the way it was done, it was through them. And they said, okay, we're going to negotiate with these creditors. And it was called negotiating. And so negotiating means charged off. But they stayed on my account for, I think they stayed on for, I don't know if it was 7 years or what have you. But here's the thing. It's not a good look when you want to do credit. But then I was given, you know how the Lord works in mysterious ways. When I wanted to get things on credit, they allowed me to explain it. And when I explained why it was charged off, I got credit. So it's going to be a matter of how they got charged off. You know, if you got charged off debt and it's going to stay on your credit report and it's kind of hindering you from making some purchases and so forth or whatever. When you go to do this, ask them to let you explain why they were charged off. And if you get denied, ask why you got denied. And if they say because you're charged debt, then ask the lender, whoever you want to borrow, that you can explain why you got just charged off debt. Because things happen, just like they happened to me, right? And then pray about that thing. I can't do anything until I go before the throne. So, I mean, I know they got some people who not at that level or whatever the case may be, but I mean, that's the level that works. I mean, that's the level, that's it. That's the only level that I know of. You know what I'm saying and stuff, you know, whatever, and just pray about it and see if you can explain it. And then maybe you can get that product or that, you know, whatever you're trying to buy or move forward with.
Is it a good idea to go back and pay off charge off debt or just leave it on your credit report?
It's going to be there whether you pay it off or not. Once it's charged off, here's what that means. All these credit card companies and so forth, all these companies are insured. They're insured. And so what it means, and I don't want to get into the thing where you don't pay your obligations, because, you know, when you take on a credit card or whatever, that's almost like a vow that you're making to pay that debt. I don't want to get you out of that. But sometimes stuff happens that's beyond your control, right? You know, like the bankruptcies and the chapter 11s and 7s and things like that, right? But all it is that if you don't pay a certain debt, then that credit card company is insured to where they're really covered for that debt. Does that make sense? They're covered for that debt. And when you charge that off, trust me, their insurance company has paid them for that debt. That's, you know, that's what that is. But that's not to say you do this and stuff and take advantage of that or whatever. You still need to have and operate in an orderly, you know, and pay your vows like you say you're going to pay them. You know what I'm saying? And that's all I can say for that. But the companies aren't losing any money. They're not losing any at all.
All right. So since it's already be on there, just don't worry about it. Don't go back and pay it. Okay. Well, but pay it. If you can pay it, don't let it get charged off. That's what I heard. But if something happens and it gets charged off,
no more obligation.
Okay. All right, I got it. So I have a question that I forgot to ask with Letitia. How much should my emergency fund be? Letitia, or whoever wants to answer it.
You know, we started off talking about that emergency fund. The first step in Dave Ramsey baby steps is saving that $1,000, and that emergency fund is not as by no means your final emergency fund. But after you start working on paying off some of those debts, then he suggests having 3 to 6 months of expenses for a fully funded emergency fund. However, it starts with a budget. If you don't know how much your income that you have coming in, if you don't know how much your bills and your expenses are, how do you know how much your emergency fund needs to be 3 to 6 months? And so when you're talking about an emergency fund, you want 3 to 6 months of a fully funded emergency fund that could cover your expenses for your household for 3 to 6 months. And it's just saying that again, if COVID happened, COVID is a year. COVID is going on, in a year now. But at least for 3 to 6 months, I can sustain and then get back up on my feet. And so you got to start with the budget and saying my budget, my household income is 2,000 a month, and we pay 1,500 a month. And so 1,500 times 3 is what you need for that fully funded emergency fund. I think, and this may be for another topic, but I want us to wrap our mind around credit card and the credit card debt and all the things that come with credit cards. And it was just a blessing in disguise to me. I was younger. I've always been declined from a credit card. I've never had one credit card in my life. And I know there are people who have hundreds of thousands of dollars of credit card debt. That is being a slave to the borrower. And I know we love our credit cards. One of my coworkers told me, I love my credit card, Letitia. But think about what is happening here. What is the point of a credit card? And again, maybe I'm a little biased here because again, everything that I've ever purchased besides my home and a car was with money that I've earned, not a credit card. So when you're talking about debt and getting out of debt and financial freedom, is that credit card helping you with that? That's just something for you to think about. When I'm getting out of debt and I want to be financially free, like we started off this conversation with, does a credit card lend to my financial freedom? And again, they're talking to my sophomore in high school, telling her she needs a credit card. Now I'm in credit card debt the rest of my life. So parents, grandparents, aunties, mimis, Gigi's, please have these conversations with your kids, because my daughter listened enough to know, no, I do not need a credit card in high school. That is debt.
Okay. Evelyn said she was told not to pay off that charged off balance, so she settled for half of the amount. And she asked them to send her a letter to state that she settled the debt. So
Evelyn, that is a good step. Long as you have written proof saying before you send your payment, make sure that you have an email or letter from them saying that they are going to abide by that. And the charge off also predicated on how long it's been. How long has this been? If it's a 5, 6, 7 year charge off, you can settle for pennies on the dollars, because all they do is sell debt and resell in your debt. And so if you want to settle, and one of the things, like you said, Chantel and Jeanette, our moral obligations to say, man, if I did something, I need to really have those values to say I need to abide by this. But that doesn't mean that I can't call and negotiate. If I have a $200 debt, saying, can I pay $75 because this debt is 8 years old or whatever. So you pay for it. But and then with credit card and with debt, again, 2 things. I don't care if you don't remember anything else. I think Jeanette talked about it. Compound interest. Is it working for me or is it working against me?
Yep.
Can you
Good stuff. Good stuff.
could you you talked about Letitia, you talked about the emergency fund and having that. Can you just I know I didn't prepare, you didn't prepare for this, but to look at when a person adds it up totally in terms of their monthly, how does that 3 to 6 months look?
So let's start with this stat. 79% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. This was 5 years ago, probably worse now, and sad. And so when you're talking about an emergency fund, you're talking about things that constitute an emergency, a fully funded emergency. You're talking about something to the extent of COVID, or I lost my job, things that I cannot control. This is what I need, my 3 to 6 months of emergency fund. So when you're talking about the budgeting, that first baby step, basic step of budgeting, the 101 that I do with the kids in the nonprofit, saying, okay, what do I need to pay every month? What do I absolutely have to pay every month? I need to pay my, Dave Ramsey called it the 4 walls: food, water, shelter, and transportation. Those 4 things I have to pay every month. And so I need 3 to 6 months of that stash somewhere. And he does recommend they put it in a mutual fund, or not a mutual fund, a money market account. put it in a money market account. So just in case I need it, I have easy access to it. And so that 3 to 6 months of emergency fund says, you know what, in case something happened to my spouse or my income out, I can still afford to live for 3 to 6 months while I'm trying to get back on my feet, while I'm trying to work back. My husband got laid off, and we were out. He hasn't worked. He didn't work. This was about 5 years ago. He didn't work for like 6 weeks until he got his unemployment. We didn't have an emergency fund, but again, this was the time frame when I just became a nurse and I was just living lasciviously. I was like, I don't care. We're just gonna pay bills and do whatever. But if we would have had a 3 to 6 months emergency fund, it would have filled in that gap for us. So you start with that emergency fund by saying, in case something happens, I have something to fall back on. And you want to start with your food, water, food, shelter, transportation, and clothing. And those 4 walls, those 4 things: food, shelter, clothing, and transportation. The things that I need to survive. Make sure your electric, no, food, utilities, transportation, your utilities, everything in.
Okay.
Yep.
So that's what makes up the emergency fund.
Yeah, food, utilities, shelter, and transportation. Food, utilities, shelter, transportation. Basic things.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Go ahead.
No,
Go
no,
ahead,
I was
Sean.
going to ask, like, when once, and this is for either one, for Jeanette or Letitia. So if, say, a person's in debt and they want to, of course, get out of debt, but they want to save the money too. They want to save the money. They want to get out of debt, but they want to be able to put some money aside. How does that happen? Like, how do you start? Where do you start that? I mean, now they're willing, and I'm just hypothetically, if a person is willing, they want to do that, but everything is spent before the month is out. And I think Letitia talked about a coworker like that. Everything is spent. What do you do just to get to the point that I'm able to save something and pay my?
I think Letitia answered that
I
earlier.
think you talked about it.
She
One
said
of the
to make a budget, I thought, if I'm not
Yeah,
mistaken.
it starts with a budget, but even with the budget, sometimes you can't even, your budget is what they say, your month, you have more month than money. So sometimes the budget is not even, you start with the budget, but you like, man, I'm $1,000 short. What do I do now? I budgeted and I'm $1,000 short. What can I do? And sometimes you do have to have that rude awakening and say, man, do I need to get a second job? Do I need to downsize? Do I need to cut back? Do I need to stop eating out? Again, sowing and reaping. If I'm sowing to the flesh, I'm going to reap flesh. If I'm sowing to the spirit, I'm going to reap spirit. So if I'm saying, man, look, for me, I was like, man, listen, I want more money going in my 401k. I have to stop eating out. I cannot be pulling up at Chick-fil-A every day. I just can't. And I promise you, you will find at least an extra $50 at the end of the month if you get serious about that budget, that zero-based budget. When I talked about having those $5, I got $5. Sometimes what I used to do is I got $5. Let's just go to the store. I'm gonna buy whatever I want. No, I got $5. Where are these $5 going before I go to the store? Creating a zero-based budget so you can talk to Jeanette and say, you know what? I have $2 extra a month, Jeanette. Can I invest these $2 extra? Because, or even, okay, we talked about the four walls: food, shelter, utilities, and transportations. I have $1 extra, Jeanette. Can I throw this extra dollar at you because those 4 things are taken care of? So when you're talking about where do I start, you start by making sure that your budget is encompassed of those 4 things. And then if you have that extra dollar, hey, Jeanette, can I throw this extra dollar at you? Can I throw that extra stimulus at you that's coming my way? And I want to pay off some debt. Any extra that I have, I'm going to throw it at Jeanette. I don't care if it's $50. You know what? I got a stimulus. Instead of going to Nebraska and buying the TV, Jeanette, can I put half of my money into this Roth IRA that you talked about? It's a mindset and it's a sacrifice. And one of my favorite things that Dave Ramsey says, I gotta live like no one else so I can live and give no one else.
Yep. You said.
No one else. Yeah.
And so to piggyback on what Letitia said, she is absolutely correct. But guess what? It also starts with how serious do you want to do it? Because again, we got to look at everything. I mean, I know some people's situations are really bleak, but let's see. Let's look at some things now. We got people and stuff. You know, they still get them nails done. They still get that weave in. They still get. Come on now. We got things. We got so many areas that we spend money and we say we don't have nothing left. But see,
stepping on toes, Jeanette. You stepping on toes, girl.
but we say those things that yes, we do have things. We have areas where we can save, where we can get that budget, just like Letitia said. Outside of those four things, there's a whole lot of money that's going to be left. If we cut out those pleasurable things, then not eat.
Now,
Like they say, beans and rice, rice and beans. You know what I'm saying? I mean, there's so much. And if you start there, and if you're serious about it, you know what? I want to do better. When you know better, then you can do better. And let's start there. Let's look at everything. Let's just not say I only have $1 to throw at me, but let's just say, let's look at you. What we spending every month, every week? What we doing? That kind of stuff. You know, sometimes one McDonald's coffee that you can, whatever the case may be, you go to McDonald's every morning or whatever the case may be, and if you cut out the coffee and drink water, that money, that'll give you $25 a month. There are so many areas and ways, and that's a part of the budgeting, like Letitia talked about, where you can cut money. We help people do other things as well, to look at other things, other insurances that they're paying. They may be able to get better rates, better whatever. We help them with different kind of areas. That's why we do that FNA and help people do that FNA, just to look at your picture, show you your picture, and show you where you can cut. Not a decision. Will have some money that they can do some damage with.
You're right. Starbucks.
And find it.
Giving up Starbucks. Oh Lord, Starbucks. Oh my goodness.
that was Chick-fil-A was my thing. And you're right, you know, just between I would eat out for breakfast in the cafeteria at work. I would eat out for lunch in the cafeteria at work. I would drive home and pick my family up Chick-fil-A for dinner. And so I was spending $600 a month just eating out. And I was like, wait, you talking about rice and beans and grocery shopping and $600 a month? You talking about shame? I was embarrassed. I was embarrassed myself. I worked too hard to be giving $600 a month away just on food. And like you said, Jeanette, it's something there. And if it's for the people who said, man, I just nothing there. You know what? Can you sell something? When Chantel talked about this, can you sell something on OfferUp? Look in your house. Can I sell this old TV, this old VCR, this old bike? Can I make something?
You are so right. I just did that. Chantel knows. I just sold a bunch of stuff on OfferUp. So yeah, made some pocket change. I sure did. So yeah, and you ladies are so right. You're so right. Yeah. Chantel, go ahead.
Why is it important to leave a legacy?
Ooh. Now that's $1 million question. This is so important. Here's my thing on leaving a legacy. We have to stop generational curses. We have to stop. When we go back, we just finished Black History Month, right? And we keep going back to, you know, the back in the time, we're talking 1900s, things like that, or whatever the case may be. But we're bound, some of us, by those generational curses. And if we want better, I was the mom, I didn't want my children to struggle. When I wanted, you know what? I didn't want them to be like that. There's some people who say, you know, well, you got to pull yourself out by your own bootstraps or whatever. That's the most ridiculous thing I ever heard. I think we have children, we have loved ones. We should prepare for them as best we possibly can while we are here, and teach them along the way, so they'll know exactly what to do and how to do with what they get. You understand? You need that inheritance. That's what other races, other people have been doing for years. That's what they've been doing. And it starts, get this and hold your seats, with life insurance. It starts there. Why? Because we have such a negative mentality against life insurance. You got to secure and preserve your income. If your income is necessary for your household to survive, you got to protect that. Tomorrow's not promised to none of us. Do you know what would happen if 1 million Black families or whatever families had $1 million policies out there, that we were leaving a legacy, that we were leaving our families to start legacy, to be able to do, not to blow it, because when you're learning all the principles and so forth, and you're going to do the right thing with it, right? But to live a better life, to do a better thing. World is just turning. It's changing. It's not going to be the same today. COVID has showed us that. Is it going to be 5, 10 years from now? What we're buying now is going to cost way more 10 years from now. Why let them struggle? Why allow your loved ones to struggle? That's how important living a legacy is. Leave that legacy. Start with the life insurance. Get that coverage. Get your income protected in case something, God forbid, happens. And then become self-insured. That's what we teach. You don't have to have life insurance your whole entire life. That's not the right product. But we teach you how to build and how to invest and how to become self-insured, meaning you got a lot of money right there. So if something happens to you, they got a whole lot that they can take care of some things, you see. But our mentality is we're stuck in that old, centuries before mentality about not leaving legacies. If we start doing that for our families as a race, as a people, we can have so much power and do so many things. And we would make our Lord proud. Does that make sense? Because everything belongs to him anyway. But if we can't do what we need to do to help people, to do whatever the case may be, what good is it? How can we be that blessing to be a blessing? And that starts with a legacy building, leaving a legacy.
Well, and I think that, I think either way we are going to leave a legacy. The question is, which legacy are we wanting to live? Which legacy are we intentionally setting up? Hitler left a legacy, but what type of legacy, according to our values, are we wanting to leave? And so the reason why leaving a legacy is so important to me is because I feel like when you talked about the enemy comes to kill, steal, and destroy, if we don't leave a godly legacy, a financial legacy, the enemy will come in to exploit our kids, exploit our families, and kill, steal, and destroy them. And so if we don't leave the legacy of wealth building, spiritual building, mental wellness, the enemy is going to devour our our family generational blessings that we are working on building. So when we're talking about building a legacy, we're talking about building a legacy that our King of Kings and our Lords of Lords has set forth up for us, because he said in his word that we are the head and not the tail. And so it's important for me to leave a legacy because it's a legacy written by his word, not by the world. And so the legacy for me is saying, I do not want my daughter exploited by men, by women, or anybody just because they said I have $100 bill here. No, honey, I have a 401k, a pension, and a Roth IRA. Your $100 bill means nothing to me. And so leaving a legacy is about not allowing our families to be exploited.
Yes, well said, Letitia, well said.
Very good. Does anyone have any other questions? If not, I would like to ask Letitia and Ms. Jeanette to come back next month for part 2, where we go in more in depth in life insurance, credit card, and maybe Ms. Jeanette could expand on her PowerPoint and show us next time. So if we don't have anything else to say, I'd like to wrap up. Letitia, would you pray us out?
Sure, I will be back next month. I'll add it to the calendar. So we'll just bow in prayer. God, we just thank you for another moment just to come to you and just really delve into your word and expound on your word, God. You said that we are the head and not the tail, God. So we ask that you would continue to put us in the rightful position that you have called us to be in, with the authority that you have given us to be there with, God. We ask that you would just guide and protect our families and cover us and give us the mindset, God. Protect our listeners, God. Send someone their way so they won't be exploited, but that your word will be exposed to them, God. Creating them a clean heart and renewing them a right spirit, God. Let us hear your word and be doers of your word, and you would continue to touch each and every woman and man and person listening on this line, God, and let them walk according to your will. And we just say thank you and we love you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Amen. So I'm going to stop streaming on Facebook.